I'm Jess Stahl, and I am the Vice President for Data Science and Analytics for the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities. And I'm also a member of the Open Mind team. And so in this capacity for UN Pet Lab, I'm really representing on behalf of pets providers, but also in the spirit of this whole endeavor overall, which Andrew will tell you much more about. So our idea for the Open Mind is to bring together national statistical offices and other government and public agencies that have in mind some use cases that would really help them to serve their mission while preserving individual and public privacy, and bring them together in the same space with pets providers and others that are like-minded and interested in the same things. And so that is essentially what we're doing today with our very first inaugural open house for UN Pet Lab. And with that, I'll turn things over to Andrew.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jess, and thank you so much, Ronald. I'm really glad to see you all here, and it's certainly an exciting time to see the Pet Lab growing so much, and I think it's an exciting time to be in the pet space in general. It's really a period of growth, and I think of interesting new technologies finding interesting uses, particularly within the statistical community, and helping them serve their important mission. So yeah, I think I won't bore you with too many slides. There's a permissions issue, so hopefully this all goes happily. Give me 1 second. But I will share just a couple. Looks like I'm getting some security and privacy settings configuration, so we may or may not get slides today. I'll talk to you. This is okay. The UN Pet Lab started earlier this year, and the backdrop for the United Nations Privacy Enhanced Technology Lab is actually the UN Privacy Preserving Technology Task Team, which has been meeting for a number of years, focusing primarily on reports and education and standards. So it's a meeting, on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. A handful of folks who both are building privacy enhanced technologies, academics researching privacy enhanced technologies, as well as members of the statistical community interested in using them. And in late last year, this conversation within the Privacy Preserving Technology Task Team sort of started to reach a point of maturity. We had produced the V1 handbook, and we're in the process of producing a second version of the handbook, which is, to my knowledge, one of the first places to formally define things like input privacy and output privacy. These terms that have been, present in the community in a verbal sense, had been kind of referred to in papers, but a really exciting kind of standardization and terminology work that's been quite successful within the Privacy Preserving Technology Task Team. And it really started to feel like, okay, what is, at some point, there's this imminent jump that needs to happen where members of the statistical community, in particular the national statistics communities, start to feel their way into privacy preserving technologies in the form of pilot projects. But one thing that was really understood by sort of everyone in this community is that this is really challenging because privacy enhancing technologies, in essence, are partnership enhancing technologies, right? In the sense that they it's about two individuals who don't want to put all their data into one place, or one person who wants to study data that's located somewhere else without acquiring a copy of the underlying records. And so inherently testing out new security technology in a realistic context requires parties who, for it to be realistic, don't fully trust each other, don't fully have the ability to just put all their stuff in one place and just do things, which inherently makes privacy enhanced technologies challenging to trial and to test out. And so in the Privacy Preserving Technology Task Team, we had seen great pilots from several members of the national statistics communities trying out pets internally, or sometimes as a part of their duties in survey work. Most recently, obviously, the great work by the U.S. Census Bureau, who I think has been pushing ahead on differential privacy. Also, additional other members, I know ONS and Stats Netherlands, and there's these programs that are building up for internal use cases. And the idea for the UN Privacy Enhanced Technology Lab was really born out of how can we lower the barrier to entry as much as possible for privacy enhancing technologies to allow for data collaborations across national statistics offices, or across members of the statistical community. So not just national statistics offices, but really the statistics community at large, in the sense that this is the moment that really unlocks greater resources to serve the mission of the statistical community. When individuals at one institution can work with information at another institution to drive important final insights without necessarily having to put all that data into one place. And so, a short paper was written up, sort of describing what this could be. And in January of this year, at the UN Global Expo, the UN Pet Lab was launched, and several initial use cases were also announced, in the sense that sort of the first group of parties that were willing and able to do pilot projects together focused on a trade-based use case. And then there are several use cases that have been pitched since then. So I'll briefly describe the trade-based use case, just so you get a sense of the style in which we are trying to lower the barrier to entry for use of privacy-enhancing technologies. So first and foremost, the trade-based use case is based on a trade data set that was provided by the UN. And so there's already sort of statistical aggregations that happen with respect to global trade, measuring the degrees of goods that are exported from one country and the degrees of goods that are imported by another country. And so one of the first challenges that happens when testing out privacy-enhancing technologies is, does everyone's data happen to be in the same format? Is it meaningfully combined in the right ways? Does it have the same types of rows and columns and these types of things? And so the first thing we wanted to do to kind of overcome that as a hurdle is start with a public data set that we already knew was ETL'd into the same formats, right? And then by starting with a public data set and starting with data that's already ETL'd, it allowed us to just take one step of uncertainty at a time, right? Which means that if you have a group of national statistics offices, they each have their portion of this trade data that's provided from the UN that's describing what's happening inside of their country. Then walking it forward towards working with private data is sort of more graceful and is able to be done with much more certainty, because each step is only incremental increase in risk or challenge. And this is really what the structure and the style of the Pet Lab that has been, I think, very successful thus far, because we're able to start with very, very low barrier to entry projects with say public data that's we already know is formatted in the same way across different participants, and walk our way towards the same experiment, but with the private data version of that public data, if that makes sense. That might have be messy or otherwise more challenging to work with. So that when you actually transition from public data to private data with some new piece of privacy tech, you're only doing that after you already fully understand how the technology works. You fully understand, what information is leaving your organization and what information is coming into your organization. Sort of all the uncertainty has been pushed down in sort of a safe environment, so that then when it comes time to actually work with the private data itself, all the tough questions have been answered, if that makes sense. So I hope you get a sense for sort of the style of the UN Pet Lab works. So it's all volunteer driven. So it's really a matchmaking program between in service of the national statistics community for those who are willing to help them trial out new privacy-enhancing technologies, heavy presence of open source within the community, and really extremely grateful, extremely excited for the open house to continue to further this mission of helping lots of interested parties meet and learn about each other, and be able to engage in education, awareness, conversations regarding, say the different policy or jurisdictions in our different countries that might be blocking these types of things, and of course in service of various ways in which members of the statistics community can trial out privacy-enhancing technology. So I know we've got a heavy agenda today, so I won't take up any more of the time, but really excited that you're all here. Thank you so much for coming, and really excited to learn about all the things that you guys have been working on, because I think that's sort of the first step in lowering the barrier to entry and helping us all better fulfill the mission of the statistics community using sort of new and improved privacy-enhancing technologies. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll give it back to Jess.
Great. So thanks so much for being here for this inaugural open house. I would like to invite Jack to introduce himself and talk a bit about the use case that he's been involved with.
Great. So, um, thank you very much for organizing this and everyone for attending. My name's Jack. I'm running the technology development at a company called Oblivious, and we've been fortunate to be involved with the Pet Lab since it really started, which has been a great journey. I think maybe what might be beneficial is, instead of going into too much of the nuances once again in terms of the structure of the data or something like that, which we can obviously go over in more detail, I thought it might be valuable to share kind of like our experience as well as a technology provider in this very open kind of collaborative group. So the first use case sprung up really, I think it was last September or so, if I'm not correct, and that was very much focused on this international trade reconciliation, kind of anomaly detections, etc. So every country, as Andrew described, had their beliefs of what their exports and their imports were, and their re-exports and their re-imports, etc., etc. And of course, these numbers, if you look at any pairing, differ from one another, and that could be from a variety of reasons. So it could be due to, um, if a country receives goods, but they're actually forwarding that as an export, and so it gets marked differently, etc. So differences don't always mean errors. However, sometimes they do, and they can point out kind of interesting artifacts that might want to be identified by the national statistics community. Um, Equally, there might be some anomalies that are unexpected, which also might want to be brought to the attention of the statistics community without sharing the fine-grained underlying trade information, and of course also preventing reverse engineering of the original inputs in certain circumstances from what is ultimately shared with the end users. Now, you might say, why is that? It's already been ETL'd, as Andrew says. It's already been kind of sanitized to be safe for use. And really, we're using that data set as kind of a proxy for how we could use more fine-grained and more sensitive information further down the line. And actually, since doing that, a number of parties have reached out and say, hey, we have interesting alternative data sources which can now be combined with those data sets in order to help give a better overview or perspective of what's happening in international trade reconciliation. So it's actually moving in the direction we very much hoped. I'm sure there's a lot of technology providers on the call, and we all come with kind of biases and views towards what we work on and what excites us, etc., or where we believe the field is going. But I think when entering, or working with the Pet Lab, one of the real benefits is actually to come with a bit of an open mind. Um, in the context of the trade reconciliation use case, we actually within the lab created two very different solutions using different underlying kind of building blocks. One based very much on MPC with kind of a federated network of data. The other using enclaves, which we were involved in, which created basically reports with watermarks that proved where the data came from, how it was processed, and that it hadn't been changed until the report landed on a decision maker's desk. And I think there's actually a certain beauty about learning about the alternative approaches, the alternative kind of mindsets of other technology providers, and to some degree also learning from the NSOs of the fitness of purposes of different techniques and different scenarios. To some degree, it's invaluable for us because it's almost like a focus group. You could say you get direct feedback from ultimately the end users in a very iterative way, and that helps us to refine our own thoughts and of course to learn from one another. The second thing is that it's had an incredibly collaborative nature to it. So often what you might find is that different organizations can solve different parts of a problem. And I think collaboration has been encouraged from the beginning. We've had fantastic collaboration both with Open Mind, but also OpenTP, for example, in Harvard, and the Smart Noise guys at Microsoft, etc., working on some of these problems. Um, and that often, that can benefit everyone's technologies. The learnings to some degree are shared, and ultimately, as technology providers, if we want to move the field forward, we have to, kind of uh, bring the standard up and make the tools more widely available in all circumstances. So it's a rising tide, raises all ships, you could say. Um, so from our perspective, I can definitely vouch as a technology provider, the experience has been invaluable, and these kind of continued learnings hopefully can continue to be disseminated and shared, and more people can get involved as we move forward. Back to you, Jess.
Thanks, Jack. Now I'd like to invite Luke Keller from the U.S. Census Bureau to share about his experience working on the project from the side of the NSO or public agency.
Thanks, Jess. So yeah, as Jack had indicated, this is the project that we're working on, right? Which is with open trade data and trying to connect to a number of different countries that are currently participating in this pilot. What's been so fascinating from our perspective at the Census Bureau is that we have these traditional structures for governing how we deploy IT, how we release data, and these kinds of technologies, I should say, are fundamentally challenging a lot of those existing frameworks. And we've been working very closely with our chief information officer over at Census, as well as some of the senior most leaders of the agency, to allow for this kind of work to happen. The goal from our perspective is, naturally, we want to make sure that we're learning really exciting things by, enabling this kind of level of sort of computation on this data. But we also understand that right now we're just working with open data, and the goal is to kind of scale that to sort of ask bigger questions of more sensitive data assets. But while we're doing that, there's some fundamental questions that we need to answer about how we're doing this work today, which is, how do we allow for other countries to come into a census IT system? It's a fundamentally basic question, but it's actually more complicated than you think. It's been really difficult, truly, working on that. But there's some zero trust type principles that we've really integrated into the construction of this that Census is not very familiar with. We're traditionally, even today, still a very, very much an on-prem kind of agency. And while we're making strides to move to the cloud, this is really forcing, being a really natural and sort of exciting forcing mechanism to have some of those conversations as well. Outside of that, naturally, there, of course, is the sort of networking challenges of how you securely communicate between, sort of country A and, country B, being, the United States and the Census Bureau specifically. So that's an exciting challenge that we've been working through as well. And then outside of that, of course, is, what do we learn from this and how can we apply that to how the Census Bureau conducts business? That's the most exciting part to us, I think, about this project, which is if this works, and that's going to take a very long time, I think, to figure out. But if this does work, how does this impact how we actually deliver value, not just to our existing data customers, but also our future data customers? Right now we have kind of two structures for individuals or researchers to kind of do research on census data. One is through our open data efforts, and there's a lot of that out there, and I'm sure many on the call are using census data in that respect. And then, of course, there's the sort of microdata that we include and things of that nature in our federal research data centers, if you will, the FSRDCs. And access to that kind of data is very difficult to get. It's a very lengthy, timely process, but there's no middle ground, right? You either have full access or no access. That's, or rather you have open access or, you have access to the data, but, there's really no middle ground for computation on our data. So hopefully this helps to fill a significant gap in our current data product offerings and allows for, tremendous, public policy research in particular to be conducted that would never have been possible in previous paradigms, if you will. So we're really excited to use this project as an opportunity to continue to kind of solve for these exciting challenges. And we're really excited generally about all the developments that are happening in the pet space and looking about how they might deliver new value to our existing and new customers. So thanks so much. Back to you, Jess.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to turn things over to Ronald Jansen, who will take us forward in the next stage of this open house, which is meeting some of you that are attending today and hearing more about why you're here and what you have in mind in terms of use cases or how you might interact within the UN Pet Lab and within this ecosystem more broadly.
Thanks, Jess, and thank you, Andrew, Jack, and Luke for the introduction. So I'm Ronald Jansen. I'm with the United Nations Statistics Division in New York. I'm leading Data Innovation Group and Capacity Development. And within that, we support the global statistical community. So this is the community of all statistical officers around the world. That's the ones we're trying to bring forward. So a number of years ago, like around 2014, this community really wanted to see how not only private sector is using all kinds of new digital data, but that also the statistical offices would start using new data sources and data science more actively in their work. So we've started on that journey, and part of that is access to data. And Andrew introduced and spoke about the privacy preserving techniques task team, and within that we also wanted to have a very practical approach with the UN Pet Lab and attempt together some projects. So the overall community is the statistical community, but we like to work with a large, broad set of stakeholders. So academia, private sector, civil society. We're really open to do this together because this is a highly specialized area, and we need to engage with other communities to move this forward. So that as a background. I think what Luc really indicated is important, is that statistical offices are really conservative in trying to share any data. So, and it's also highly regulated. So if statistical offices are able to improve on giving access to their data to others, or getting access to data from other statistical officers, for instance, is what we did in the pilot project, that would be a major step that we think would also be able to do this with other organizations, other data sets across the broader spectrum of data community. So in that sense, we like to hear from you, for those on the call, what you are doing and where your interests are. We have been since the start, we have been holding back a little bit to open up too quickly on too many projects, because we're a relatively small group, and trying to do projects right takes time. But we like to hear from you who you are, what you do, and what kind of use cases would be of your interests. So we have about an hour for that, which is good. And I have prepared an initial list of those on the call to introduce themselves, indicate somewhat about their organization, and then indicate what for them would be use cases which would be of real interest to have privacy enhancing techniques used to make data more shareable. I will go through this list, and I will also indicate who will be the next in line, so you can prepare yourself. The top of the list is a surprise, but I will start with our friends from Indonesia, Setia Pramana. There were many Indonesians who registered for this call, and so really like to hear from Setia where their interest lies. And then the next one on my list would be Paul Comerford. So, but Setia, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm the first one.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's great to have all of you in this meetings. So I'm Setia from BPS Statistics Indonesia. Currently, I am also associate professor at Polytechnic Statistica STIS, which is educational institutions of BPS Statistics Indonesia, who we are preparing the data scientists for BPS Statistics Indonesia. So every year we have 600 graduates for BPS Statistics Indonesia, and that will be sent all around the Indonesia. And as mentioned by Ronald, that we are working currently on several big data projects. Most of the projects are related to different type of data sources. We have web crawlings. Most of the case we try to capture several economic activities from websites, marketplaces, like job vacancy websites, booking sites, weather, like other online news, Google Map, and also IDX, which is the stock exchange. And also we do satellite imagery research, which actually this is the second year of our research on satellite imagery. We also working with UNCE and also with several agencies like ADB and also UNICEF on utilizing satellite imagery for poverty mapping and also for trying to capture economic activities, of course, also with agricultural statistics. And the third big data sources that we are working, actually also Ronald have been working as well, is with mobile positioning data that is being used for tourism statistics and metropolitan statistical areas and also commuter statistics. We also try to get the like Google Popular Times, Google Maps, and other in data that we can get from Google to capture the activities of people in Indonesia. Related to we actually I'm really keen to know these groups. So because the data confidentiality and privacy in Indonesia is the main concern when we are using big data. I remember 2015, Ronald and all colleagues, we are PPS Statistics Indonesia and also Ministry of Tourism announced that okay, we are we can get access to mobile processing data, and then people asking, so you are tracking me, how is the our privacy, right? So that's the big question I remember that time. And then we tried to convince them that actually there are several ways that we cannot track into the individual level, right? Like for example, we don't have any ID of a real phone number. Also, when we do sampling, there are several kind of maximum or minimum number of samples of several areas to be aggregated, so we cannot go into detail of individuals. And also, we can only access directly on several samples, but then the mobile network operators will do all the rest, and then they also make sure all the data privacy is okay. Right. I think that we have done the data privacy for mobile processing data. But what we are interested in right now is that 2019, BPS Statistics Indonesia have a new regulation that all the e-commerce, all the companies that working on the e-commerce should report their data to BPS Statistics Indonesia, which means that we can get access on the daily transactions, right? Which actually also need to be cautious because it will be related to their activities and other information. Right now, we don't use on too much detail right now for these steps. The first stage is only limitation. We just ask for aggregate data, but then we might ask in the future on more detailed data. So that's also a challenge, how to make sure that the confidentiality of the data should be kept because of that issues. I think that's all from me, Ronald. I hope
Thank
that
you.
can answer what you need. Okay.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to achieve today is just giving introductions about the variety of viewpoints and where people are working on. For you, of course, Setia, thank you very much for all the information, and it's related to the work of the Statistical Office of Indonesia. So it's at the heart of the kind of things that we do. So thank you very much for sharing that, and we will certainly. I will certainly come back to you offline on a number of those issues because we're working on it, and we really like to move that forward. But just to show that we have, thanks, Setia, different kinds of viewpoints. Paul, I see you're on the line here. Maybe you can indicate, Paul, ICO UK, indicate what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Comerford, and I'm here today with my colleague Antoinette Haig, and we work for the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK, which is the data protection regulator. So we're doing a number of things around pets. One of them is developing guidance on anonymization and pets, and we will have a pets chapter that will cover various technologies, things like homomorphic encryption, secure multi-party computation, trusted execution environments, all those pets that often get talked about. And we will be looking at some of the data protection compliance issues around pets, how they can benefit processing of personal data, the identifiability of pets, both in isolation and in combination with each other, and some of the governance requirements around pets, so how they will work with data protection. So this is something we're currently working on at the moment, and we have been for some time now, and hopefully later this year we'll be publishing that. In addition to that, we do a wide range of work with industry with our ICO Sandbox. So we have participants that will provide pet solutions that we will monitor and provide data protection advice on. We support things like the FCA tech sprints to provide data protection advice. We've also been involved with ad tech work, working with the UK CMA around pets-based solutions provided by the likes of Google, Apple, and others in the ad tech industry. We're also looking at privacy preserving AI, and we're in the early stages of looking at developing guidance around best practices on data protection around AI attacks and how pets can be used to mitigate those. So we're in the very early stages of looking at that, and we will be putting together a technical group in due course, which you may be interested in. So that is my side of pets. I'm just going to hand over now to my colleague Antoinette, who's going to talk a bit more about some of the other things we do in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Paul, and many thanks to the UN Pets Lab for having us today. Privacy enhancing technologies are really important to the ICO. They're a really big part of the work that we do. In addition to publishing the guidance and the work that we're doing on AI and the work with the Competition Authority, we recently closed a project called Pets for Public Good. This was a series of workshops focused on health data sharing and focused on the challenges of adopting pets in data sharing contexts. So we will soon publish those results and recommendations from those workshops. We are also supporting the UK Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation on the US-UK Pets Prize Challenge. So this is a joint venture or a joint competition, if you like, aimed at basically setting challenges in different contexts to for pets developers and folks on the technical sides of pets. So we're advising and supporting this very international effort. I also lead the Pets Expert Forum. So this is a forum for academic experts, industry experts, independent experts. I'm very open with applications, as it were. So I will leave my email in the chat, wherever you see it. So get in touch if you'd like to find out more about the Expert Forum. We meet on a reasonably regular basis, sort of once every couple of months. We have guest speakers. We have sort of very guided discussions and provocations and things like that. Finally, to mention, as we work towards publishing the guidance, we will complement the guidance with case studies. So these will be practical examples and best practice case studies of how we see pets interacting with data protection. So folks, thank you so much. I'm going to stop there. Please do contact us to find out more about the Expert Forum and to find out more about the work that we're doing on the case studies. And also, if you would like to hear from us about the Pets for Public Good data sharing project, we're happy to send the reports and recommendations out. So thank you all so much.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Antoinette and Paul, on this. Just one a small clarification for myself is if ICO is a government organization or if it's a non-government organization. Paul, Antoinette, who would like to answer
it's
that?
government, Ronald.
It's government. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, just for clarity on that. But it's great, all the work that you do, and we will certainly will be back in touch on connecting that the dots on a number of things. Now I will go to Kurt first, and I'll come back to you, Hun, after that. Kurt, are you available? Kurt is from Duality Technologies.
Hi, I'm Kurt. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and
Hi.
clear. Please go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you for facilitating this conversation. My name is Kurt Roloff. I'm CTO and co-founder of Duality Technologies. I'm also one of the main people behind the Palisade open source library for fully homomorphic encryption. It's one of the more widely used libraries in the PETS technology space, particularly focused on homomorphic encryption is what we do. Duality is a company that basically is developing collaborative data science solutions focused on privacy and privacy protections, basically focused on commercializing various privacy tools, particularly homomorphic encryption is one that we particularly specialize on. Our group basically came out of the US defense community where we've been building this kind of tech for US government applications, for well over a decade now. And one application that we've been working on, which I think is very relevant to the PETS lab, in addition to a lot of our commercial pursuits about fighting financial crime and fighting money laundering and international trade and things like that, is to help to support analyses for policy researchers on effectiveness of grant making. And so one use case that we've been supporting is in collaboration with the University of Michigan and supported by the Sloan Foundation, where University of Michigan collects large volumes of data on grant making. And this is grant making for students to go to school, to do graduate research and things like that across the top universities in the United States. And they also collect a lot of demographic data on these students. They've particularly been able to do this because they're a trusted nonprofit, very well established. They've also, the professors behind it have also been able to somehow convince the Board of Regents at the university to take on the liability of holding all this data. So in some sense, it's a highly trusted third party. The challenge with this, and the challenge that Michigan is facing, has been that they have been able to share data only in very restricted ways. People need to sign very restrictive data use agreements for researchers, policymakers to get access to the data. Have very restrictive access once they actually sign these data use agreements. Sometimes physically traveling to Ann Arbor, as lovely place as it is, it's one place in the world as opposed to researchers everywhere. And so, researchers want access to this data so they can run analyses to see, for example, what kinds of grants have best socioeconomic outcomes for students, what kind of grants, lead to largest generation of IP, for economic development, all these kinds of good things that a statistician or a policy researcher would want to understand about the effectiveness of grant making. And I'm sure it's not too hard to abstract away how this could work for generic NGOs and grant making for NGOs across any kind of social good and things like that. So we've been working with the IRIS group under Professor Jason Owen Smith at Michigan, particularly to develop prototypes built on homomorphic encryption, where to create something of a virtual enclave where data could be encrypted, sent to this homomorphic encryption enclave, and allow basically greatly decrease the legal barrier of entries for policy researchers to log in, access the data, because all the data is encrypted end to end. The liability associated with access to the data is much lower, and hence the barriers of entry for researchers to get access to the data are much lower. Still signing, and identity verification, all the other good things like that, but not so much the need to, for example, take on personal financial liability and things like that associated with access to the data. And so what we've been able to support in this kind of environment is to allow policy researchers to build, standard kinds of models, regression models, basic statistical analytics, and things like that over these data sets, and basically democratize data access for what it is for the general social good of identifying what kinds of grants are much more effective. And so this is all, I want to be very careful. This is all in prototype right now. It's basic proof of concept, but it's over nation scale, United States nation scale data sets over the grant making of the top 50 or so universities in the United States. So that's what we're doing at a high level, and I'm happy to pause there. I'm getting a little static, so maybe this would be a good time to hand off. So thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, thanks for the for that use case. It sounds like also one of the use cases that we have been working on, this linking of education with demographic kind of data. So no, very, very interesting, and I think we might pick up later on with you on this. I want to move to Yehun. I think we were hearing your static a little bit on your mic right now. So I hope this is going to work, Yehun. It's late in Korea, but please indicate the kind of research you're doing. And then after Yehun, I will go to James. Yehun, please go ahead.
This is Jiun. I'm a vice president in Samsung SDS. I'm leading security research center in Samsung SDS. So Samsung SDS is the IT arm in Samsung sister companies, and then we do provide IT services, and then of course like analytics services as well. So those sectors involving like manufacturing, financial services, because we have a five like a financial companies in Samsung as well, and also medical Samsung Medical Center, which is one of the biggest one in Korea. For PT, we have been working for PT technology for more than 5 years, and then we first focused on home of encryption, like doing some POC with our customers, like logistic regression training, decision tree training using HE, and also deep learning inference, like with Samsung Medical Center. I will get back to this one later on. Also, recently we also focus on PSI and synthetic data and MPC as well. We've done the POC like a privacy preserving inference case, like for deep learning, like a Samsung Medical Center, because quite a list like often some hospital like a Samsung Medical Center, they do have a lot of data. Also, they do have analytics capability, but the other like small clinics are like some small hospitals, they don't. But to make make use of this machine learning model, they those branch office cannot send their like a patient's data, of course, in plain text, and then with the privacy issue, sometimes like maybe I guess like internationally, like they need to cross some borders in some cases to make use of some machine learning model. But I think I do believe like also those big hospital side on their side is maybe like they are reluctant to share this machine learning model because maybe many regions, but for the privacy, you this model is exposed. Maybe it is possible to get some data information about the data that is used for training for this model. So for this case, of course, like a machine HE can be used. Like the data is encrypted, sent to the hospital, and then those inference is done in encrypted form. So we've done this POC with the Samsung Medical Center, like for RNN GRU model, and then this is the first use case. And then I guess this use case is quite common and very well known because it is some problems and some tracks in the IDISH competitions, right? So so we also participated in this competition for last 2 years, getting some prizes. And the second and the last use case I want to mention is the PSI-based data aggregation. And in Korea, recently, like the Korean government really strongly encourage like public and commercial sectors to share the data. But the thing is, unfortunately, the PET technology is not mature enough, so they cannot directly use for many use cases. But also, we see in Korea many players they want to use the traditional like a conventional de-identification technology because they want to train this data like for deep learning, for instance. The PT is still a bit slow. So but often they want to aggregate the data set between organizations. But the thing is, in Korea, it's too slow because we need a trusted third party, and then the human has to be involved. Like they have to manually check all those some process. So sometimes it takes like more than 3 months. So but we come up with some solutions using the PSI. So it can be done automatically and also preserving privacy. So for instance, like two organizations, they can check how many common customers, like a common data do they have using PSI. Also, this whole like end-to-end data aggregation process can be done automatically using PSI. So we done POC with the business unit recently, and we also shared our results to Korean government agency, and then we expect to deliver these services within this year. Yeah, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yihun. Good to hear also your involvement with the government sector, and yeah, thanks for introducing that, and we'll sure also that we will pick up with you on these issues. Thank you. I now go to James Robson, and James, I think you're in civil society. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It looks like my camera's not working on this Teams call either, so
Okay.
apologies there. You've just got my dotted tones. So I'm currently a data protection officer based in something called the Evidence Quarter in Westminster in the UK. The Evidence Quarter houses a number of research organisations funded by central government. An example of that is What Works for Children's Social Care. For the last 12 months, I've suddenly, almost inadvertently, became the first person to place a charity's data into the UK Office for National Statistics secure research service that was outside of being just a government data owned. So the kinds of use cases that I'm seeing that need the likes of, the PETS technologies that are being developed is, for example, how do you reach into that unstructured local government type of data that around children in social care, where one intervention program, say, what we do is we would fund an intervention to improve the lives of those children and the social workers working with those children on childcare protection plans, for example. And where one aspect of that would work and we have a good outcome, where could we find other parts of the country that need a similar outcome, and what are the defining factors, as in the data that would tell us where this intervention is required, and then roll out nationally. So we've done things like roll out social workers in schools throughout the UK after beginning as a pilot project, and then expanding outwards, and that's going to just continue and go further. Another potential use case, I'm not just the data protection officer for What Works for Children's Social Care, but also for TASO, the Centre for Transforming Access and Student Outcomes in Higher Education, a real mouthful of a name, shortened to TASO. But they've currently got an issue where the interoperability of national pupil database data, we're talking about school pupils, primary and secondary school pupils, that their records being able to be matched up with higher education records. So who actually goes to university and how to match those up. And there is fear in sharing that data and having that interoperable. So PETS, of course, is an answer there. So my interest is, how do you substantially improve and increase the timing to be able to ask the questions that the organizations I work for are asking? So that's really my passion, fascination, and especially with the developments in trusted research environments that's currently underway in the UK. Of course, the ONS SRS being the pioneer. But then you've obviously got the Goldacre review in the UK with £200 million going into the building of a trusted research environment there. So there seems to be a lot of synergies going on, and not much. Not in my mind, not enough focus on the actual legislation. So I guess I've been on the coal face of how you put together the correct data sharing agreements, legislation agreements, privacy notices for data subjects, and so bringing those two worlds together is really something I've become passionate about.
Thanks a lot, James. That's very informative. Yeah. Also, I mean, for the number of important work that you do, also good to see that you link up with ONS, the Statistical Office of the UK, who's a big player in the work that we do. So there was a good connection there. And you're absolutely right. I mean, legislation. I think also what Jeroen was mentioning, like certification, is the kind of things that really are needed to make sure that we can actually apply the pets to real life circumstances, if you like. Thank you very much for that. So we continue on my list, and we saw already Divya. And Divya, if you could introduce yourself, and after Divya, Stephen would be on my list. Divya, please.
Yes. Hi everyone. This is Divya. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Excellent, great. Good morning. So thanks again for convening this Pets Roundtable session, Ronald, Jess, and team. So my name is Dr. Divya Sridhar. I'm the Senior Director covering data policy issues at SIIA. SIIA is the Software and Information Industry Association. We're a trade association that represents about 450 companies, and that includes digital content providers, many of the big platform companies, as well as academic publishing, education technology, and financial information services. And our role in the policy team is to really focus on two goals, at least within my portfolio. One of them is to advance the need through advocacy for a U.S. federal privacy law. And second, we're really focused on pets and advancing legislation within the U.S., which we think can really support the needs of many members, many different stakeholders, many of the private companies who are on today, as well as governments, third parties, and so on and so forth. So those are the big goals within the privacy umbrella that I cover. And I would like to share a little bit more about some of the advocacy and legislative roadblocks that we see within the U.S. and also how that could apply more globally to many of the countries who are on, many of the members who are in other countries today. So our member companies, they use pets in very unique ways. Some, like I mentioned, are large household platforms. They use pets to support real-time accurate data sharing in the AML and financial risk space. Others are using pets to support cross-contextual advertising. I think a couple of the roundtable members today have mentioned that as well. And that's a responsible alternative to more invasive online privacy practices. And then a couple of other SIA member companies have deep national security expertise, and they've used pets to support government clients whose mission requires operating on sensitive data. So pets can really thread the needle in that regard. So we work with these companies across the information landscape, and in particular, I'd like to touch on a couple of the legislative and regulatory roadblocks we've seen that are kind of creating inertia and impeding progress, and a few very brief policy recommendations. And I would love to continue the conversation offline for folks who are interested in this. So just briefly, in terms of the U.S. policy landscape, we've seen a couple of announcements more recently that have really brought pets into focus. The White House, DOT, and National Economic Council, I think one person mentioned today, the Nation's Supply Chain Initiative, which has really, it's basically leveraging pets to expedite and streamline the movement of goods. This spring, there was a markup on bipartisan U.S. legislation, H.R. 847, and SII is working very closely with those members who have co-sponsored the legislation. It's bipartisan and bicameral, and we're looking to really move that bill to the finish line because it will increase funding and support for pets research through the National Science Foundation. So it would be a huge win to be able to move that forward and get more companies on board with showing the need for this particular piece of legislation. And then in addition, we've also seen the U.S. Department of Commerce publish its 2022-2023 priorities, and including strategic goal number 4, which is to expand opportunity and discovery through data. And then I know that Jess and other folks have touched on the U.S. UK Pets Prize. I'm not going to go into that in in greater detail, but this is just to share a few examples of what we've seen very recently. Now, in terms of concrete policy recommendations, I know somebody, I believe Luke or others on the call had mentioned that you all are working through the PETS Lab on a concrete document that focuses on establishing common definitions and standards for pets. I think that's extremely useful. Would love to take a look at that and see how we can weigh in from an industry perspective. But it will really provide the context and the parameters for setting a common ground for pets. And that's something that I've seen in academic publications and journal articles being really necessary. And maybe it's not elevated to the level of policymakers. We should really be getting the word out more about that particular resource that's out there on pets. So would love to take a look at that. Second, I would like to say that we are hearing from a couple of members today on the call and more widely that there needs to be more incentives to study pets through government-backed research and policy. And so, as I mentioned, that particular piece of legislation within the US, HR 847, is one standalone effort, but more can be done, both at the federal level to pass U.S. federal privacy, a federal privacy law, just like the the GDPR in the EU, as well as the UK GDPR and other efforts that are happening globally. So we're really excited to try to move the ball on that. And then finally, I think somebody mentioned today on the call about the regulatory sandbox model. It might have been the UK ICO, and I love that particular model. Singapore has something very similar, and we heard at the IAPP conference just happened 2 weeks ago about Singapore's model, and I think that's a great one that other countries could benefit from, even the US. What Singapore is doing is their Monetary Authority of Singapore has created a financial incentive, $500,000 at a 50% funding level, and it actually incentivizes both first movers and early adopters of pets. And I think that's a great way to really get more market entrants through the door with regard to pets, and incentivizing, kind of creating a forum for key players who are interested and just need more financial incentives. So it's sort of the carrot method to move that particular ball forward. Last recommendation we have, which would love to talk with you all about, is encouraging public-private sector collaboration with the recent announcements about the US-EU Transatlantic Data Privacy Framework, as well as the new global cross-border privacy rules of the CBPR that includes many APAC nations. We know that many different countries are extremely serious about getting the framework finalized and getting it right this time around, and it's imperative that we include pets as part of that solution to the opportunities that lie beyond with regard to both bilateral and multilateral data flows and cross-border interoperability. So thinking really constructively about how pets can be an important part of that plan is going to be necessary. So just to close, I'd like to say thanks again for inviting us to present a little bit about some of our work on the policy side. We think the US government should definitely be double downing on this effort, and we're excited to see the Pet Lab come together. I'd love to also have folks reach out if you're interested in doing more advocacy around policy and legislative aspects of pets, and happy to discuss that offline. So thanks again for having me.
Excellent. Thanks for all of that information, Divya. Very, very informative. And yes, we made notes. We made a recording, and we're going to check later on again all everything, all the points that you mentioned, and where we can link on. So we still have quite a few on my list, so I'm moving on. I want to go first to Stephen Ednierson, and then after Stephen to Serena. Stephen.
Hey, Ronald, thank you so much. And after following Divya, I feel like I'm right back in New York City. Rifled, quick, succinct, articulate. So thank you for that. And thank you for allowing us to share in this discussion today. So I am Stephen Ednierson. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Tumta.ai. We're a Silicon Valley-based black box that basically transforms sensitive, regulated GDPR-esque data into its safe equivalent for creators. So the vision that we have is that, having worked in enterprise technology for now 20 years, my last job was with a company called NIO, a Tesla competitor, and seeing the challenges that we had with accessing really valuable, accurate, and data at scale. How do we ensure that the people who are trying to solve important problems in energy, habitat, mobility, these things, how do they get the data they need to solve these problems? So we leverage computational differential privacy and artificial intelligence to create our product. We're industry agnostic. Obviously, we're a trust product. So we're very excited about this particular initiative. The best way to describe us is that we turn oil into seawater, or uranium air into clean air. I mean, we make things that are harmful and dangerous safe to play with and safe to innovate with. We have, so that's what we do. Use cases, real briefly. Like I said, we're industry agnostic, but we understand that we're best applied for people who need precise equivalent, safe and private, for data at scale. And so we are working with the Nordic government. They want to unlock life science data that they have across their country. And how do they do that in an accurate and precise way and a safe way? So that's one example of a data pool, or data, the other way to say it is data market, right? Taking it to the EU and saying, here's a data that you can use to create, let's say, rare disease drugs or whatever. We are also a tool, the use case for internal organizations that again, large enterprises that want to share data safely within their organization, so people can be unfettered in their innovation efforts. And then, of course, the biggest, I think, opportunity that we have is thesis-based third-party collaboration. So governments who have data, or utilities that have data, that want to, let's say, for example, address how do we get off gas and oil? You know, how can we leverage conservation immediately today? You can literally stand up a safe data set and invite people to literally play with that data to come up with problems, rather than, I'm a firm supporter of like Stardex, which is Stanford's accelerator. Skydeck is Berkeley's accelerator. I've been mentoring there forever. Nordic Innovation House. But the challenge there is we have a funnel that says, oh, hey, if you have a climate change, come on in, we'll look at it, right? There's no thesis based, like, here's the data set we have, here's the problem we're trying to solve, just solve it. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We love that you have started this initiative. I think I'll pair it with what a lot of other people have said about, we're shocked that there is no global standard for privacy. So it makes it very hard for people who want to use pets, let's say, for example, synthetic data, to understand that some of these things are not private, but they're being sold as private, and they're very dangerous to use. So, and we all know that everyone's terribly concerned about privacy, so, as they should be. So we would love to jump in, contribute in any way we can, to help establish a standard as well. So that's us. Please reach out to me. I'm easy to find. My last name is not very common. I'm reaching out to a lot of you, but please as well. Thank you, Ronald.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Steve. Well appreciated, and reaching out to our community. Yes, on the standard setting, we are working on that, and we're not done yet. So definitely help is appreciated. Serena, I see your screen is open. Please go ahead. You're from Italy somewhere.
Yeah, I'm on Lake Maggiore at the moment. So good afternoon from the European Commission. I'm Serena Signorelli. I currently work as a data steward at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. And I work in the Center for Advanced Studies on a project which was launched last year, and it's called Computational Social Science for Policy. What we would like to do is to take advantage of new sources of data, but also models, and apply them and give the policymakers a help. Try to make use of this data and of these models in new ways that were not used before, and also take advantages of all these amount of data and digital traces that we have around, but we cannot use at the moment. So what we did in the first year was a mapping exercise that came out with a report where we mapped in 20 to 25 topics. Among the topics was official statistics, the future needs of research that policymakers, in our case, the European Commission, can have in the future years, and that could be tackled using computational social science methods. This will translate also in a handbook, which is upcoming by the end of the year. We're working with some external experts to develop which are the methods and which data could be used to tackle those policy questions. And as I already mentioned, one of the topics was official statistics, also because in the past I've worked at the Eurostat Big Data Task Force, so I already had an interest on that because I was working with tourism statistics and Wikipedia data. So we are interested in, and we're working on studying which are the obstacles and the challenges that official statistical offices have in accessing the data and in using those data, the privately held data, and how they can translate in something meaningful, let's say. But at the same time, we are also interested in some issues more related to data governance and to access to the data, also in light of the just released proposal of the Data Act from the European Commission. So you see, we have a double interest on practical terms with use cases that we don't know at the moment on, we don't have at the moment on official statistics, because in our team we also have 2 data scientists, but at the same time we are working with the digital economy unit of the Joint Research Center. So we are also interested in these more theoretical aspects like data governance, business to business, business to government data sharing, and whatever. So we also have some conversation with some colleagues from Eurostat, and we have some contacts as we are in the commission all together. And so we are very happy to be involved in this project, and we would like to continue discussing and be involved in some way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Serena. Yeah, we're closely working with the colleagues from Eurostat, and especially where they have been working under the ESS net for with machine learning use cases, and which are very close to the kind of privacy preserving work that we are doing. So there is a very natural kind of overlap. So yeah, I think you and your team would chime in quite nicely. So looking forward to that for the future. Thank you. I have a few more on my list. First, we have, I think, Juan and Francesco from Tune Insight, and then I also have Integrate AI. I think that's Carl Martin. I don't know if Megan is also there, but Juan and Francesco, I don't know who will take the lead here.
Hi, I can take the lead. Can you hear me?
Juan, yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Well, thanks again for giving us this opportunity, for inviting us to this gathering. So first, let me just introduce myself. I'm Juan Troncoso. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tune Insight. I'm joined here also by Francesco Marino, who is the project manager for the project applications that we have in the health vertical. Tune Insight is an EPFL-based startup in Lausanne, Switzerland. And our mission is to enable data collaborations in highly regulated environments such as health and financial services, especially related to GDPR and international data transfers between member states and other countries that don't have an adequacy decision, such as US, Canada, and so on. And this is made possible thanks to a combination of cryptographic techniques, a combination of PETs and federated learning that avoid data transfer and enable an end-to-end protection of the used workflows. So both from global aggregate statistics extraction, but also from the point of view of training and executing machine learning models. And all this is, of course, in line with GDPR principles of data and risk minimization, which enables our solutions to streamline GDPR compliance. And we have worked also a lot with authorities, for example, in Switzerland, but we're also talking with data protection authorities in several member states in the European Union. We use a combination, as I was saying, of homomorphic encryption, secure multipath encryption, and federated learning with libraries that we have developed in-house and that have been also part of our participation in several challenges, such as the ones that Yihun already mentioned before, like IDASH, where we have been consistently among the winning teams in the application of homomorphic encryption and combinations of homomorphic encryption and others to secure genomic processing. Again, that's a highly related data that cannot be anonymized due to the inherent personal information and identifiable information that it holds. But we're active in several verticals. Currently, we are deploying our solutions at university hospitals to enable the progress of multi-site clinical analysis, multi-site clinical research, and personalized medicine, in particular personalized oncology and also other different applications in health. And on that, we have also published several articles in journals such as Nature Communications, Cell Patterns. That again, if you want to discuss offline, we can bring more information about all these applications and the use cases. But we have also worked not only in health, but also on cyber intelligence and financial services by enabling this efficient and scalable training of machine learning models on distributed data, which is our target global high-level application. So that's, in a nutshell, very briefly, what we do. And we are thrilled to see where this initiative from the UN Pets Lab goes, and we will be happy to participate to the best of our capacities.
Thanks, thanks, Juan. Yeah, the health sector, I mean, health data, it comes back in many of our conversations. So we're certainly really interested in it. Switzerland is also one of the statistical office of Switzerland, one of our collaborators, and we like to see also how we can connect with that on. So I can see some future connections on those issues. Two last speakers. I would like to give a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll wrap up and look forward. So I have first Carl Martin for Integrate AI. I also will give the opportunity to, if she wants, to Lisa Bader from NVL. Carl, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I'm from Integrate.ai. I'm the SVP of technology. We're an AI startup based in Toronto, Canada. So we have been around for about 5 years. We're the first AI company to be Privacy by Design certified, and we essentially make it easy for other software developers, other builders to deploy pets into production. We recognize through the past several years that while there's a whole variety of pets available and different software developers might look at them and experiment with them, it is very hard for them to turn those into production solutions. Our focus lately has been on federated learning and differential privacy. And so if you are, and we're industry agnostic, I'm going to get into some of the use cases in a second. But if you're a software developer and you have, say, a rough network of information that you would like to access for the building machine learning models, but you can't join them for either regulatory reasons or other sensitivity reasons, using tools to develop your own federated network is a very hard thing to do. This is most companies will not have specialization in this area. And so the main, as I mentioned, the main focus right now has been federated learning and differential privacy. So one of the use cases that I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about, we're working with a company called DNA Stack, where they enable genomic research. So they actually started an initiative called the Autism Sharing Initiative. And this is using genomic data to do a variety of predictive analytics for autism treatment, autism diagnosis. And the data is spread across the world. The data is protected, and federated approach is natural. But putting this, it's not just a technology question, it's also an infrastructure question. And so if you're intending to operate a federated network, running the infrastructure for that. This is if you're providing the tools for data scientists to do their work, this is a live, real-time infrastructure challenge. And that's where we step in. And so our focus is on essentially making this easy for the software developers to just put this into their solution. Our goal is to support every model type, every technology as much as possible so that we can enable the scientists to do their work. So neural networks, linear models, we're working on tree-based models, and essentially enable those to work on these federated networks. And so the work we're doing with DNA Stack is essentially to transparently have this technology adopted into their product. As many of you know, if you're working in the differential privacy domain, making that technology actually usable, you know, how to set parameters and whatnot, those are all things that ultimately we are taking care of to make it as transparent as possible. So we see ourselves very mission aligned to the UN PET initiative because we want to enable adoption. We want to make it very, very easy. So it's both the technology as well the management of infrastructure in this scenario. So our interest here is really to make our solution available. We're very mission driven. So even though we're private sector company, we're very drawn towards anything that in health and also wellness and wealth across the globe. And so we seek out opportunities to partner with companies where we can provide that infrastructure and technology component while they specialize on the actual modeling task and predictive analytics. So that's it for us. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Carl. That was a really nice introduction of the work that you guys are doing. Again, also in health-related issues, seems to be a common theme through a lot of the work here. Finally, for the last speaker, before we wrapping up, Lisa, are you here and are you willing to also introduce yourself and your institute?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
yes.
perfect. Sorry, I'm having some challenges with Teams this morning, so I apologize. The video is not working with me as well. But I'm Lisa Bader. I work for Invail. So we are a DC area-based pets provider. Similar, have been around for about 5 years, doing a lot of work across both the commercial and the federal domain. And frankly, this has just been a really engaging conversation. Really thankful for everybody kind of coming here. We obviously have been doing a lot of efforts over the years to kind of help educate around this pets category and just help people. A lot of our customers, we run into a lot of just kind of understanding challenges. So we've really kind of been starting at the ground zero and helping people sort of understand what we're doing. But I think for the most part, just to kind of generalize, most of our sort of use cases and the places that we're finding the most value have to do with helping organizations leverage that third party or that untrusted data in ways that they couldn't otherwise do it. So, that could be through organizations like we work with an organization called Deliver Fund that helps with human trafficking data, giving organizations access there, allowing them to securely search and query into that. And then also, again, doing a lot of work kind of on the Fed side across data silos and things like that, as well as in the commercial space across jurisdictions. So really interested, obviously, in all of the efforts happening here with the UN Pet Lab and excited to get more involved moving forward.
Thanks, Lisa. That's good to hear. Yeah, so we do also have had conversations in the how we would call that? Well, you mentioned human trafficking, but in that kind of area with international organizations like who work with refugees and so forth. So that could be similar kind of issues there. So at this point, no further introductions, even though maybe there are some that I apologize for that if I did not reach out to some of you here. In the wrap up, let me start first and then maybe give Andrew the last word on this, Andrew and Jess. what we want to do, I think, is we will get back to this the people here on the call and those who also registered and were not able to join us today, just to take this as a starting point of keeping the communication channels open. One thing we want to do, and I think it was put in the chat, we have a Slack channel, so we can do there in the Slack channel, we can have some immediate follow-ups on questions you may have, reaching out to each other on things. I think we as a team from the UN Pet Lab and the Privacy Preserving Techniques task team, we will follow up with you with some questions from our side, also about how we can shape future open house sessions, right? So I think this is a start. We want to do this every 4 to 6 weeks, but we might give it a little shape in how we want to interact with each other on those occasions. It could be topical, it could be just some further introductions, or have some of you get onto a topic in more detail and open that up. So I think we have a number of possibilities how to take this forward. Maybe some of that could also feed into the UN Pet Lab projects that we want to take on, but that again, we are a little careful how much we're going to take on, so that we will see how that moves over time. I really liked all the introductions. I would like to thank everyone for participating in this. I think this is a brilliant start of this UN Pet Lab open house, and I see a lot of potential about how we could work together. And with that, I give back to Andrew.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you all so much for sharing what's going on in your world with respect to privacy enhanced technologies. It really, the pets community is still pretty small in the sense that it's fast paced. Like, it's a lot of things that are changing. The state of the art of technology is changing. How it's being used and adopted is changing, and getting more advanced and more mature. The policy space is changing, the regulatory space is changing, and so I'm really actually quite excited and quite optimistic about these open house meetings in the not too distant future as almost like a sync point. I feel like I just learned so much about what's going on in different corners of the world that I didn't even know what was going on. I like to think I know what's going on, but this was really refreshing and really exciting. And yeah, so thank you everyone for being so willing to share and so willing to contribute to the group. It does seem like the kind of thing where we all have the ability to learn from each other, get to know each other, help each other with initiatives where we have shared interests and mutual benefit from things like, say new regulation or funding for pets or these types of things, as well as to explore projects together. Please do join the Slack and participate actively in between meetings in this same light. So if you're looking for resources, if you're looking to hire or to recruit or to do pilot projects or whatever the case may be, this really is designed to be a resource to help the community grow, and obviously with special focus on pets and how they can serve this community. So thank you so much everyone for coming. Thank you for being so forthcoming with and open with all your projects and all the things you're working on. And yeah, with that, I suppose I'll pass it over to Jess for any final closing remarks. But yeah, really excited.
Sure. Thank you. So as Andrew said, this is a bit of a small world, and I think so many of us are like-minded in our efforts and the difference that we would like to make in the space. And so I just want to encourage everybody to stay very engaged in this. I see some folks have already joined the Slack channel. Actually, quite a few have, and I hope that more will. And as we host these open houses, please stay engaged here as well. As you can see, it's even if you've already introduced yourself or already attended this one, I hope you'll actually return back, because I think that there's a lot of value in connecting in this way. And so with that, I will turn back to Ronald to conclude.
Yeah, just wishing everyone a great day. For some of us, it's early. For some of them, it's really late. I thought it was a great start on the open house, and hope that this will be a great journey where we are on together. So thanks a lot. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.